announcement around future consultation. Without further ado, I'll pass it to Chief McLeod to talk about their experience in the federal court.
As said, as mentioned, my name is Harvey McLeod, Almechum Chief Upper Nicola Band. I'm here. I wasn't planning on being here and talking in front of leadership today, but a lot has happened in the last day or two, and Ruben couldn't be here, so they looked around the room and I was sitting there. The work, the effort, the discussions, the meetings, the soul searching that we've done for the last 5 years at Upper Nicola has been tremendous. It's taken its toll on our council, it's taken its toll on our elders, and it's taken its toll on our community and our nation. A very controversial project, Trans Mountain Expansion Project, and our community spent a lot of time and effort on it. We had a lot of discussions with Kinder Morgan, and we had some discussion with the Government of Canada. We couldn't reach agreement with Kinder Morgan, nor could we come to consensus with government. We had a lot of issues, and we had a lot of concerns regarding the project and the impacts on our Tumulach, our land. And through what they called Phase 3 consultation, we weren't successful in addressing or even completing or talking about the concerns that we had from our community, never mind the nation. And as a result of the timeframes, our discussions were cut off and the government announced approval of the pipeline, of the project. Again, after a lot of soul searching on our behalf, on behalf of our community, we decided to join and get involved in the court case. Do we at Upper Nicola have a lot of dollars to spend on legal cases like this? No, we don't. But the issue was big enough and large enough, and the impact's considerable, that we had no option. So our community suffered, gathering the funds to get involved in the court case. We had to go into our community and have a look at all our budgets. Where can we cut? Where can we get a few dollars to share and assist us move forward in judicial review? And we did that. And we waited. On August 30th, the decision was announced. The results were announced. And I spent that morning with our council in our council chambers, listening, anticipating. Were the efforts of our community and our council sufficient enough to convince the court that our rationale was strong enough to have them overturn the decision to go ahead with the pipeline? When we heard the results early that morning on August 30th, we celebrated for about a minute and said, now we have some real challenges in front of us. How are we going to move forward? How are we going to handle ourselves? How are we going to get the capacity to take the next steps? In the last day, we've had some discussions with Minister Sohi. Advised last night that the decision on moving forward was going to be announced this morning. And agreed to meet and find a way, talk about concerns, talk about process, talk about principles on how we're going to move forward. In the decision this morning, it was announced that Phase 3, again, in our minds, Phase 3 has passed. And we're looking at a number 4, whatever that will be. But it's going to be a lot deeper than what Phase 3 consultation is outlined to address. We mentioned to the minister that we have a lot of concerns yet. And we have and want to talk about steps moving forward. And we know that we don't have a lot of time to get this work done. Even though it was mentioned this morning by the minister that the time will and the space will be created for us to have our dialogue. We know that the direction that he gave NEB last week was 22 weeks, or whatever it was, but it's not a very long time. So we know that we don't have very much time ourselves. So we're going to go back and open up discussions and dialogue with government and also the proponent, the owner of the pipeline. Even that in itself has changed the scope on how we view the project and dialogue with government, because now they are the owner as well. So we have a lot of work. And are we united up and down that line? No, we're not. We have some of our relatives in some of our communities that have signed agreements, and we have some that haven't. And we've got to find a way on how we're going to move forward together, whatever that may look like. I had a meeting with the minister a week or so ago. And just to put it into perspective, he doesn't know very much about Upper Nicola. He doesn't even know very much about myself. He doesn't know very much about who we are and where our homes are. But one of the things I shared with him, jokingly, but the picture is quite clear. I was showing him some pictures of Peter Watson and some of his staff that came to visit. They were actually in our community on August 30th, the decision day. And we had our meeting, not in the boardroom, but we had our meeting in the corral, the horse corrals, with some horses. We had a good afternoon. That was our boardroom for that day, and that's the way we should have all of our meetings, in places like that, places that we're comfortable, places that we know. But in talking with the minister a week or so ago, he mentioned, I've never been on a horse. I told him, good. Next time you come up to Upper Nicola, we'll get a horse for you. I advised him that we have slow horses for slow riders, and we have fast horses for fast riders. And we have horses that have never been ridden for people that have never rode a horse. And he was saying, please, Chief, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I will not tell him it. I'm telling you right now, the horse that you get when you come to visit us will determine how the discussions are going and how the talks are happening between us. So if it's not going good, you're going to get a horse that's in a chute, and he's going to come out firing, and he's going to teach you a lesson. And when you hit the ground, you'll know what we're talking about. And you'll have to come back and open the dialogue with us some more. So it's going to be very interesting. Upper Nicola has did its best to stay out of the limelight and out of the press because we had our own work to do at home with our people. And it's going to be some interesting times over the fall and winter months as we engage our elders again, our cultural people, our spiritual people, and our leaders to carry on the battle again. And the thing ironic about all of this is that we just finished talking about environmental assessment. We just finished talking about our children. We talked about a new relationship with the Crowns, but nothing has changed. And we are at a point in time and history where that will have to stop. And the advice that I had for the minister this morning was, we've done our talk. Now we've got to walk the walk. Let's make it happen. Because underlying all of this is FPIC, free, prior, informed consent, and how we were going to get there. And that's going to be the interesting walk that we're going to be on for the next few months. So with that, White Limland.
Thank you, Chief. We're not going to get through all three presentations by 4 o'clock, so I've asked Chief Chapman if she could engage Cameron Lewis from Flynn Road to collect his message, and she'll report on both First Nations and Flynn Road tomorrow morning. So immediately after this, we'll invite Chief Myers-Ross forward at 3:30 for his update on the drilling activity. So Cookbees, we've got 14 minutes left on this in total. Mike 23.
Lise Behan Cookbee of Insuletco and the Gatlam Nation. Hello everyone, my name is Lise Behan. I'm the chief of the Cowater Band. We're part of the Gatlam Nation. I'd like to thank the Secwepemc people for hosting this meeting here today, and so we can talk about our very important business. In regards to the Trans Mountain Pipeline, as Harvey was saying, Chief Harvey was saying, it was a long fight. But it was always thinking positive right from the beginning when we gave the direction to the lawyers to file those applications and move forward with it. Because every day you hear, how do you think you're going to beat them? Do you think you're going to win? But on August 30th, we were informed we won. And that's huge. The direction came clearly from the membership of the Cowater Band that we were to carry on the fight because of the impacts of what's going to happen in the Cowater Valley and the water. It was clear from the membership to say, this is our standing rock, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect our water for today and future generations to come. And that was the reason why we filed the papers again, to stand with our brothers and sisters, and to make it loud and clear that it's not okay to build a pipeline wherever you want. Talking about the environmental assessment, that really needs to be looked at and very carefully. Each community is different. When it came to the pipeline in the Cowater Valley, the membership was very firm about what we were supposed to do and where we were to go. With the announcement that just came out, I've been doing interviews all morning, responding about how Minister Sohi did the announcement this morning. I did an open invitation to the Prime Minister back when he was down in Chilliwack to meet with those chiefs at that time that had signed an agreement. I did an open invitation to the PM. I hand-delivered a letter to him December 5th, 2016. I didn't get an answer 6 months later from Minister Carr. So I sent out an open invitation to the Prime Minister again this morning, as well as Minister Sohi. They talk about consultation. Well, when you start moving forward on a project, you need consent. That's why I did an open invitation to come into our community and have a look to see what we're protecting. To hear our members say, this is our standing rock. And the fight has only begun. There was a clear message to Minister Sohi this morning. I've been invited to a meeting tomorrow morning with him, but I'm declining to go because I want him to come to Coldwater and speak with myself, my council, and my membership about why we went to court, why we need to protect our land, our water, and to listen to the children about why it's important. Because you need to understand, without water, we can't survive. I attended a Water Flows conference last year in Vancouver. A lot of the booths and it was funny because a lot of the booths were filtration systems. And they asked me, do you need one in your community? I said, no, not yet. But how long is it going to be before we all need one in our communities? Think about it. That's how important water is. So the fight will carry on. But you heard it from leadership this morning. We need to stand together to protect our land and our water. Not only for today, but for future generations. Cooksham.
Mike 22.
Thank you. So I'm just going to talk a little bit on a high level about how the Federal Court of Appeal decision might affect you regardless of your position on the pipeline, and then about the ongoing National Energy Board process, and then today's announcement. So first of all, from the decision itself, I think one thing that's a real victory for Aboriginal rights in Canadian law is a real clarification or confirmation of what the Supreme Court has been saying for a long time, which is that consultation is not just a procedural checkbox requirement, as many of you I'm sure have experienced, that it actually requires, especially on the deep consultation on the deep end of the HIDA spectrum, meaningful engagement. And so the government's approach of sending note takers with zero decision-making power, of holding the view incorrectly that they couldn't change anything about the NEB conditions, those were some of the reasons that the consultation was struck down, and that the Federal Court of Appeals said it fell well short of the mark that the Supreme Court of Canada had said. Moving forward, you're probably aware that the National Energy Board has been directed, as Chief McLeod mentioned, to review marine shipping under the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, which was one of the fatal flaws that was identified. That looks to be another repeat of this kind of same approach that got them into this mess in the first place, which is looking at these projects with such a narrow scope and such a limited mandate that you can never get the whole picture. And I'm concerned that they're repeating this once again. Comments were due today, or are due today, for their proposed scope. I think it's really important to note that they're not going to look at the underlying economic case. They're not going to look at the impacts on climate, which were also raised by Upper Nicola and other nations who were involved in the litigation in the last round of consultation and just not even addressed. But because the court didn't specifically identify it, it doesn't look like they want to redo it. And this is part of the fundamental problem that it's unfortunate that we're not seeing a change coming out of this decision. And that is not just limited to this federal government, but to federal governments for decades, where they look at these wins on Aboriginal rights that send them decisions back, of which there are 250 in the last several years on resource projects. And they look at those through a lens of what's the least we can do coming out of this? What's the legal minimum? And then they aim for that. They aim for the floor, and they keep coming up short. And that's because of this approach, something that I kind of think of as like colonial contempt, where the federal government sees consultation as a burden rather than as a duty, as a constitutional and moral duty. And unfortunately, it looks like today the announcement, although it does have some improvements on process, is kind of a repetition of this same approach. They're going to try to do the minimum. They talked about the federal court studying the decision from the Federal Court of Appeal and using it as a blueprint for moving forward, where an approach that actually respected free, prior, informed consent would try to aim higher than the floor, higher than the legal minimum. We see businesses, we see governments doing this all the time, but they refuse to do this, or they haven't made that shift yet. And so that doesn't mean there aren't great opportunities to continue to advance this. It's promising at least that they're talking about designing the process in collaboration with First Nations. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about that to really really put forward their views of what a proper process is. They're talking about they're bringing in a former Supreme Court Justice, Frank Iacobucci, to help guide it, and we will see what happens coming out of it. But at the same time, while they're saying all this great stuff and the most important relationship and blah, blah, blah that you've all heard, at the same time, they're still saying, but we're going to build the pipeline. And so this is where it irritates me, frankly, that they claim to be engaging in this meaningful process, making a fresh decision, but A, using stale evidence, and B, it appears that their minds are already made up. But as you probably are aware, the reciprocal duty requires that some engagement in these flawed processes in order to preserve rights for future appeals. They've identified that 117 First Nations will be consulted through this process. In the original consultation report, there were 140. I'm not really sure how they landed at 117. But the only things that I'll just add in closing on this is, those nations are all impacted, who are all impacted, will benefit from this decision, as will others from future decisions. But specifically for those nations who have signed mutual benefit agreements or have been, kind of moving forward, I would invite you to ask yourselves, now that Canada is the owner, how might you have approached those conversations differently? How might you have approached the IBA conversations differently? We know Kinder Morgan really played hardball, and they just had a small pie that they were dividing amongst whoever was going to sign, and they were very strict about that. This is a different scenario now with a different owner, a different proponent, engaging in theory, in deep, meaningful consultation. And so I would just invite you to ask yourselves that, what might it look like and what would be different? I'm going to close there. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be around for the rest of the day and tonight's gala, and thank you for your time.
Thank you to the panel. I'm afraid we don't have time for questions or comments, but I'll take advantage of your willingness to take questions and comments over the course of this evening. So thank you, the Chiefs. We're just stressed for time. My apologies. As I invite down Chief Russ Myers-Ross, for an update on some drilling activity. Want to acknowledge and thank Shotamal Ethlat, Chief Maureen Chapman, for being flexible to move the forestry piece till tomorrow morning. We're not 100% sure if Cameron Lewis from Flinroe can stay here yet or not, but if not, we have a pinch hitter for him. Chief Russ, mic 22.
Thank you. I'm just going to start out with a drum song from PL. But in a lot of this work, we're seeing as a lot of the spiritual work that we do is a lot of, or a part of the work that we do to protect this place. So we want to do that just to honor this subject. Yeah, this song is a fish song, honoring the fish when they come up, and part of the protecting Tahltan being is protecting the whole watershed from Tahltan being all the way down the Fraser River. Eunice 18, also at South Coteen Nation. Just want to acknowledge, grateful to be here on Secwepemc Ulu, and honored to be here for this anniversary, and happy to have my daughter come here too and be part of the picture yesterday. As a statement, I'm requesting UBCIC and fellow chiefs to continue supporting our nation, the South Coteen Nation, in protection of Tahltan B, or Nabas. And this seeks to support stop of the exploration drilling program and trying to find a final solution to end this conflict. Just a bit of background information. 2010 went through over a year of the Canadian Environmental Assessment Federal panel review, and in the end it rejected the Prosperity Mine proposal. This was due to the potential loss of fish and fish habitat, infringement of grizzly bears, and also the potential infringement on South Cotean rights and title. When it was rejected, the federal government at the time, I think Stephen Harper and the Conservatives offered the company another chance at going through a second environmental assessment, and that was granted, and they started in 2013. So we went through almost a similar process, and only one thing being changed was the destruction of the lake. Instead, they offered to develop a recirculating water system that would have to be pumped forever to keep that lake alive. And in 2014, the federal government panel review once again rejected the new Prosperity Mine for all the same reasons. Soon afterwards, Taseko Mines Limited filed a judicial review, and they lost in 2017 in order to pay court costs. The company has since appealed the decision and is sort of waiting for the next appeal, I think probably February 2019 or a little later. Going to background in the BC province, because there's two different jurisdictions here, so it makes it more complicated. BC Environmental Assessment granted a certificate to Prosperity Mining proposal back in 2010. Although they couldn't get the federal government, the mine can't go ahead without the federal government accepting it. So I think in 2015, they were asked for another 5-year extension, and to date, there's an amendment to the original Prosperity Mine proposal. So even though the federal government's gone through two environmental assessments, the province awarded Taseko Mines the ability to build, and now they're going through an amendment process. But in the late 2016, Taseko Mines filed a proposal for a massive drilling program. This was proposing almost 8 times bigger than what they proposed back in 2011, but it proposed 367 test pits, 122 drill sites, 75 kilometers of roads and trails to be carved up in the Nabas area. This would include implanting about 11 trailers and about including a 50-person camp. So, so in the past maybe 2 months, we've gone through, it's not a very good image, but it sort of gives you the footprint of what we're looking at. You can see the blue is where Toltambie is, and sort of where the brown is on the far left is where the copper and gold is being proposed to be open pit mine. And then on the right is being proposed to be the tailings pond. So massive areas would cover kilometers long tracts of land. So last year, I think right before, so during the consultation period, there's a lot of back and forth, and I think Taseko Mines got frustrated, and they submitted a letter to Christy Clark at the time, the premier, and it sort of read three different options. It was sort of said, grant us the permit, or we're going to threaten to bring you to court, or buy out our interests. And I think days before the government was about to transfer over to the NDP, the BC Liberals approved the drilling program. Since then, summer of last year, we were able to get an injunction, and also the federal government also intervened and tried to intervene with the injunction. So they went through a judicial review, and they recently failed. So the federal government didn't appeal it. So our nation intervened with another injunction, and it ended up that we end up losing that court battle. And so we're in appeal now, and we end up getting an injunction for the next 2 months. So we're anticipating that there might be a decision in November this year. So here's some, oh, can't see well, but here's some pictures recently. We had a lot of people up on the land, up at Tultambi. We had PL up there, and we had gathering there with people from Honeygoteen, and David Suzuki also paid a visit. Here's a cabin and some of the lakefront. But I guess moving ahead, I think what we're asking from UBCIC and fellow chiefs is to stand with the South Cooti Nation to assist in protecting Tultambi and Nabas, act and advocate to provide political support to help end this conflict, advise the province to stop the exploration, this exploration drilling program, advise the province of its concern regarding the environmental assessment and the amendment process that Taseko Mines is pursuing, and stand with the South Cooti Nation to request the province to recognize our authority, considering our high-profile nature in this conflict. And this recognition must include the implementation of rights to free, prior, and informed consent, which may require legislative reform. So I think it's a topic considering the environmental assessment work that's being done. But I think, going back to sort of the context as well, I think what's difficult is that the NDP and the BC government, federal government, they've made commitments to move towards free, prior, informed consent and through UNDRIP, and really this is a case scenario where they're failing. They're failing to get the proper protections for Indigenous people in place, and this is sort of a result of it, of dealing with old laws and trying to figure out how to deal with these current conflicts. It's a huge drain on us financially, politically. It slows us down completely, and I think this is going to be one of those things that's just a revolving door. As long as Taseko Mines has mineral interest, they're going to keep making proposals. They're going to keep coming back, and try to get either their mine or to get bought out. So, some of the actions we've taken with BC is to connect with Minister Scott Fraser and the Premier Horgan. We've had conversations, and I think even since June, I think there's been that their hands are tied because they don't want to impede on the statutory decision maker. In addition, I think their legal opinion or the advice that they're giving is, I think they consider this a $1 billion liability, and they don't really want to touch it, and they're very fearful that this could be disastrous, I guess, financially for the province. So it brings it to a very high-profile case, and one of those situations where we're relying on the First Nations Leadership Council to help us out. So I want to thank you, Sachan Alya. Just a few little notes that I have up on the board here is, continued support can be made through supporting the Dasyko Tribal Park, as we're evolving an alternative to these conflicts, and it's based on our South Cootien laws and values. Also just announced a cabin building effort and trying to get some of our families and people from the land some support in building the family lodges. Also looking at Raven Trust as fundraising. These court cases, they cost us tens of thousands of dollars, and I think even the last couple probably cost around $200,000 each. Even this injunction, I believe, would be $50,000 plus, just to start. In terms of gatherings, we're having a ceremony this week. We have Cecil Grinder up there continuing the spiritual help. And so October 4th is our anniversary of raising the totem pole that we had erected about 4 years ago when we announced it as Eco Tribal Park. And then this Saturday, October 6th, will be the final day of the ceremony, but it's open to everyone. I know the weather's a little bit rough, but still want to offer that up. So I think that's the end of my presentation, but I'll leave it to Tyrone.
Thank you. Opening up to questions and comments. Mike 24.
Wait, Cookby Judy Wilson, Nisconnet, Union BC Chiefs. I just, Russ, I remember the Chilcotin were working on a consent-based regime, and I just wondered where that was at, and because I've seen other nations come out with consent-based regimes now with better standards and recognition of title and rights, and you know, more forward thinking now. And also included the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People.
22.
Just quickly, yeah, we've sort of been sitting on the consent regime since being able to present it the last couple of years, but we're trying to sequence it so that we can develop it into larger based nation land use planning.
Final call for questions or comments. Mike 24.
Thank you, Tyrone, and Russ, thank you for the presentation. One of the things that I've learned recently in the fish farm discussions with the province, when they talk about the statutory decision maker, I always thought it was like a mystical wing of government where they hid these statutory decision makers, but it's a delegated authority from the minister. And so the minister can be the delegated, the stat decision maker, as can the premier. And it was something I just learned, and just thought I'd share that with you, because perhaps that is something that we can be mindful of when we seek a decision and they throw that stat decision maker and they can't fetter that. Because if you can push it up to the minister and the premier level, they can then enact new policy or legislation to make room for such a decision. Thanks.
I did have a comment.
I would just like to echo Chief Chamberlain's words. Thank you for the presentation. I heard the comment about the weather, but I suspect we're going to be up that way. I just want to say to the delegation that we've had a very rigorous discussion about title and rights and the need to shift our approach to these issues and be less complacent and more active, and I want you to know that you can continue to count on the UBCIC to support your efforts in Telton B and your ongoing demonic battle with Taziko. But from time to time, one of our indigenous nations puts out a red alert call for support. And I just want to say to the delegation, when that happens, we have to go. We have to pretty much drop everything we're doing and go to the aid of whatever nation that is. And that may very well happen here. And you know, as I get older, I'm more sensitive to the cold, but nonetheless, I'll be there. I remember Browns Creek, we darn near froze up there. But at any rate, I just want you to know that we're still here, and you can count on us. Why, Lim?
Thank you, Grand Chief. I'm wondering two things. We are a little bit ahead of schedule. I checked with Chief Ross earlier. He's not available tomorrow, and you've seen as part of his presentation, he's probably making his way back home to participate in the ceremony. So would it be appropriate to turn your attention to the supporting resolution? See some nods. Would you like this in camera, or would you like the webcast to remain on? Any preference? Wide open?
I don't have a preference.
Does anybody disagree with leaving the webcam live? Seeing none, and it is a supporting resolution. I'll turn your attention to Resolution 2018-38 regarding protection of the Tsilhqot'in sacred site in Telton B, Nabas, and surrounding area. Therefore, be resolved, UBCIC Chiefs and Assembly fully support the efforts of the Tsilhqot'in Nation to protect their lands of profound cultural and spiritual value from the proposed new prosperity mine, and will stand behind the Tsilhqot'in Nation in defense of these lands, regardless of any decisions by British Columbia, the Environment Assessment Office, EAO, or the BC Ministry of Energy and Mines. And therefore, it further be resolved, the UBCIC Chiefs and Assembly call upon the province of British Columbia to heed the cautions of two independent panels which conducted the environmental assessments, demonstrate commitment to environmental protection and the cultural survival of First Nations, prevent further destruction to Telton B and Nabas areas, and work swiftly with the Tsilhqot'in Nation to resolve the conflict over the use and status of these important lands and waters. And therefore, it further resolved UBCIC Chiefs and Assembly direct the UBCIC Executive to work with the Tsilhqot'in Nation and other like-minded organizations to advocate on behalf of the Tsilhqot'in Nation and communicate clear support of the Chiefs and Assembly, including 1, advise the province of British Columbia that First Nations across BC are watching closely and fully support the Tsilhqot'in opposition to the exploration program, and that it's a violation of the constitutional rights and the rights affirmed within the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples to have authorized extensive drilling, road building, and exploration in such culturally important lands for a project that has been twice rejected. Bullet 2, advise the province of British Columbia and the EAO, the First Nations are bearing witness to the new prosperity amendment process and are alarmed and deeply concerned by the EAO's apparent lack of integrity and its disregard for the interests of First Nations in British Columbia. And therefore, it finally resolved UBCIC Chiefs and Assembly direct UBCIC Executive to support the Tsilhqot'in Nation in securing recognition by the Government of Canada and British Columbia that the Tsilhqot'in Nation has a special relationship to and authority over its lands and waters through the exercise of its title and rights, and that in cases such as the conflict over land use at Telton B and Nabas, and this recognition must include implementation of the right of free, prior, and informed consent. Is there a mover? Mike 7.
Maureen Chapman, Chief of Squelch, I so move.
HKCM. Mike 19.
Chief Chad Innes of the Penticton Indian Band, Okanagan Nation, second.
Limlimt. Chief, any discussion? Question's been called. Any opposition to the resolution? Any abstentions? Seeing neither, it is carried with your consensus. Thank you. Any concluding remarks, Russ? Mike 22.
No, just want to acknowledge that there'll be fire and warm hearts out there. And yeah, just one point I forgot to mention was just that in some cases we're trying to put options in front of the province, and we're even trying to dig up even the Mineral Tenures Act and finding sections which can be applied in which the ministers do have power to deal with this. But I think that's the pressure we need to give is that they have the power and that they should be dealing with it. So.
Bob wants to know if Russ has a horse Stuart can ride. He says tongue in cheek. Thank you, Chief. We're moving into a celebration period of which Galagame is going to be your MC, but I've got some housekeeping things that I think are better to draw to your attention now rather than the end of that ceremony. First of all, everyone that's registered or wrote their names down for the banquet tonight, everyone that wrote your names down, you're registered. The banquet is at the Sandman Signature Hotel, 225 Lawrence Street, if you're not staying there. Remember your name tags and lanyards for tomorrow because we are beginning the day with resolutions. And banquet time, start time is 5:30. Turn it over to Galagame. Mic 24, please.
It is a great honor and privilege to MC this component of the 50th anniversary of the UBCIC AGA. And I've been instructed explicitly this is not a roast. But what we are doing now through various presentations is to honor Grand Chief Stuart Phillip Asiut for the 20 years of incredible services to the First Nations of British Columbia and Canada. I can recall when I first walked into the rooms 14 years ago and the inspiration that I found sitting at this very table with chiefs talking of the important issues and the challenges and how it is that we want to move forward. And of course, leading that discussion, leading the work of advocacy once the meetings had been concluded and the resolutions had been given direction, was Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. And I have not known Grand Chief Stuart Phillip to miss an opportunity to stand united with the First Nations in the struggles that we all face. And so what I would like, and I'm going to request of all of you, if we could give a great big round of applause to Grand Chief Stuart Phillip to begin this portion of our agenda for all the work, the tireless hundreds of thousands of kilometers that he's driven through the night, rain, snow, sunshine. So let's give him a round of applause to begin this off. I see we have some housekeeping underway. I know for myself, I've been very fortunate for the time that I've been on the UBCIC executive to slowly and patiently drive Stuart crazy as we've traveled to many places together. And I wish to apologize publicly for all the trauma that was induced to Stuart when we drove to Ottawa together and back to be there with the Tsilhqot'in people. But all joking aside, I find myself in a very fortunate position to have spent the years, hours, and days to listen and learn from Grand Chief Stuart Phillip and the work that he's done on behalf of all of us. And I want to share one little story before we carry on. And it was something that really showed me that Stuart knew me better than I knew myself. We were at a meeting and the topic of family and children came up. And at that time, myself and Gukbi Christian were the co-chairs of the First Nation Child and Family Wellness Council. So as the discussion progressed, apparently I was leaning forward. Each time it got a little bit deeper and I'm leaning forward, I'm getting ready to respond, and I hear this whisper in my ear, "It looks like you're getting ready to chase a car." And so I looked at Stuart and I realized that I was getting quite motivated to speak up, and I realized that it wasn't necessary. But I thought it's a moment that always stays with me because it was his observation skills and how quickly he got to know me and was able to start guiding me away from chasing cars. I just don't let him see me when I do that now. But to know that we've all been very fortunate to enjoy Grand Chief Stuart Phillips' work, I want to begin with inviting up Rod Toma, I'm sorry, I've lost track of the agenda, which doesn't surprise anyone here. I'd like to invite up Russell Casimir so we could start off with a prayer. Perhaps is Russell not here? Pardon? That'd be wonderful if we could have Evelyn come and share a prayer to start this component off.
Nachum is geëet hepatitis alia. Maar knogens het kalkoek dit hannes hepatitis dit hannes ek atmes. Het kalkoek bi Nachum is koekstek of gewaait selten skiet alia. Juchminde, het kalkoek bi en selten maar la is wel achwist kalkoek bi. Bilk eilwchus na jit kalkoek bi maar la gewaait is damek selten is kalkoek bi. Juchminde. Je aan het kalkoek bi koek bi. Juchminde het kalkoek bi. Nachum is koekstek gewoon geëlgst is na alia gewaait selten. Great Spirit, we thank you for this day, that we come together to listen and to share our knowledge. And we give thanks, O Great Spirit, for all those that have come here. And may, as you return to your homes, may your path be made clear. And as you return to your homes, Great Spirit, I ask that you watch over each and every one of them, O Great Spirit. Watch their children, their families, and their communities, Great Spirit. Watch over each and every one of my relatives that are here. Special blessings for our cook beside us here. Stuart has been with us for a long time, and may the path that is chosen for him be made clear once again. Great Spirit, watch over him and his beloved wife who stands beside him since day one. I ask grandfathers to watch and walk with you, continue to walk with you. I thank you very much for the years that you have given to your people. Kirksjam. Hout kalkookby. Kak niemand dat kalkookby maar la gewaait gestemd kalkookby. Genoegen dat kalkookby maar la is elk stel gesjaan of gewaait zelken kalkookby. Ik meen dat kalkookby elk was niet iets kalkookby ik meente. Wanneer gemeenschappelijk sterk kalkookby gewaait stem na alleen het meeuw. Dukt ilm. This I say with all my relations. Oh.
The next piece of business, I'll invite Rod Thoma forward to provide a brushing of Grand Chief Stuart Phillip.
Quiet. Can I get everybody in the circle that want to be part of helping Stuart? He's been at this many years. I'm going to need all the help I can get. Oh, no. Whoever wants to take part. Ask the singers. Chad, where are you? Okay. at this time when we start brushing, in your own way, say prayers for the couple. Everybody knows how his life has been. Take that opportunity to give back. A lot of times we were always on computers and always on other things. This is the opportunity to use our prayers, the true gift that was given to us. Sing a song.
shirt? Yep. Or Arnold's going to do the plate. Ribbon shirt and the O&A for the
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob's in demand. Run.
Yes. Okay. So I'd like to thank everyone. We have a number of presentations to accomplish to finish off the honoring, and then of course we have the banquet this evening. So.
Just do it.
We should have said the long conversation on it.
Arnold Peters. Do you have the plate? You have the plate? Yeah. Okay.
Should I take it out?
Yeah, yeah. Take it out and you can say a few words. So I'll turn the mic over to Arnold Peters, our long-serving money man here at the UBCIC.
Longest serving.
Longest serving.
I'd like to congratulate Stuart on the pretty fast 20 years. He almost trying to catch up to me, I guess, but no, I don't think he'll ever do that. But on behalf of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, I'd like to present this plaque. Pretty heavy. It's a attempted design, or not a design, but that was made by Clarence Mills, a Haida artist. And he did it, started in last April, and it is pretty heavy, so I'll assist you to your car if you want. But it comes with a case too, a drum case.
Okay. Thank you, Arnold. Our longest serving staff member of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. All right. Is my travel claim done now?
Sorry, I forgot the artist's name already.
I want to turn the mic over to Cookby Judy Wilson.
Okay, we just, part of the Union BC Indian Chiefs Executive, want to honor Stuart with a ribbon shirt. And, you know, he's always talking about his suits and everything, and we thought we'd be a little bit different today and offer him a ribbon shirt. He's on many front lines, you know, not just only here in BC, but in other places where he's called. So, you know, sometimes he has to zip up in it real fast, so we thought we'll get him a zipper, sort of like a Superman type ribbon shirt, be in his closet or in his car. So whenever he gets that call from anybody from our nations, he can be there in a flash. So, and part of the design is from Taylor Jacobs from Squamish, so he incorporated the Union of BC Indian Chiefs colors into this ribbon shirt. So on behalf of Chief Chamberlain and I'm pretty sure Bob would say more, because he spent more time with him in the car than I did, so got really to know him after 9 hours or 9 days, I can't remember. Yeah, a long time. But here it is, Stuart.
It's amazing what you can learn with someone, about someone, when you drive from Vancouver to Ottawa and back together. And so Stuart and I had the joy of doing that with Stuart. And just so you know, he was a young man. And I'm forever jealous of Grand Chief Stuart Phillip because he got to see Led Zeppelin in Vancouver back in the 70s. But it was a great time driving across the country, and I remember when we finished doing the prairies, as we ventured into northern Ontario, there's a lot of lakes, there's a lot of bluffs. And so Stuart was teaching me, he says, see this hill here with the bluffs on each side? That's the place you want to have the roadblock. And so we had this discussion all the way through northern Ontario. This would be a good place for the second level of the roadblock. And so it was great fun. And of course, I remember when Stuart got us pulled over by the police just outside Calgary, and how I had to talk our way out of that one, but it was good. So now what I'd like to do is call forward the Okanagan Nation, please.
And how we endlessly spoke of Joan every moment of the day.
Yeah.
Wait for Hazel. When I hear a woman telling me what to do, I've learned. No, I've learned. Who's going to speak? Who's going to speak? you want me to hold it while you speak?
Okay. That's a first, but okay. Didn't want to.
Want to say in Gaelic too? Want to say anything in Gaelic too? Sweet. We're gonna ask Jane to say some words for you guys before we do this, and then we'll do this.
Why aga store Atlantic Melo. Gelut at me instrumentaliek sa pexute me penonsen. Store dat os keol gast as school oitlak sape. Mad kon spindik. Hoe is wat ek ook sin meetjies. Mad loda. I said, Stuart, not just because you're a cousin, but because you've worked so hard for the people and for all the people for years and years. It's been what? How many years? 20 years?
Something.
So, and here they're going to present this gift to you. You're going to cover him up with this, which means a real lot to all of us.
Are you done, Auntie? Okay.
Why is that is gast lim.
White Peace and Axial, it's an honor here, Grand Chief, to stand before you with members from our nation, from the province. And I just really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the friend that you've been, the help that you've given, and not just in the last 2 years when I was still a human. And what we would like to do is, there's so much that we would love to say to you, but I think that we would love to gift you with a song.
We're
going to wrap you up in the mic part too, so you can't go anywhere. It's out of your way.
Hey, hey, hey.
So we're just going to pass it around. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say a few words to Stuart. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. We were counselors once, and then he went on to be the chief. Then all of a sudden, president of UBCIC. But it's been an honor just watching you all this way, and I really do appreciate that and all the work that you've done on behalf of all of us. And that really means a lot, and you brought us a lot of pride. And you know, you and Joan both, and you know. You've done an excellent job, and you know you're the man. Yeah, I don't have a present to give you, and I got a lottery ticket, but I think this is the one, so I can't. Excuse me if I don't give it up. Well, all the best to you, Stuart.
Why, Stuart? Why, but kikame we stay west call hayat kan hit hayat sunxil is kal hayat la knola hayat al tamhula sal hik al seol hik al qakhwal hik al stachmala lots wet sun klepterment hil sabe why can live das call Talik which column. Why I want to thank you, Stuart. When I see the news and I wonder if Stuart is in the background. Then I see you at the front lines there. And I feel so much better because I know that you're out there speaking on our behalf and supporting the people, and with your little smile. And I think I'm going to miss that. It's going to be a long time before I quit looking for you in all those news reports concerning all our concerns about the water, the fish, the land, our title and rights. You covered everything. No biases, no objections. And you and Joan, you know, you supported one another. You're a beautiful couple. Keep on taking care of one another because it's going to take a while before you get used to being the home, I think. And you've earned it. So thank you very much. Wait.
Thank you. On behalf of the Penticton Indian Band, which the community you come from, everybody, remember? We'd like to present to you not too many of you know his name is, his Indian name is Asiut, which my late father, Joey Pierre, gave him. And it's the loon. And if some of you know the loon, sometimes it travels by itself. Many times it's alone. Many times it has a big job to do. Lots of times it can just dive down and not come up for a while to look and for hunting, for food. Sometimes it'll come up a half a mile down the lake. So when my dad gave you the Indian name, Asiut, he was really proud of you and what you have accomplished. And so this picture is Asiut. It's sometimes he's not alone. Sometimes he has company. So we're really appreciative for Joan lending you to us when you need to get out on the front lines. So we just want to say we're proud of you and the work that you do and the walk that you walk, and for everything, for being Sin Pinkton Kentil Kikenmut. You'll not leave there for too long. You'll come up somewhere with a purpose and with power, because they can see and do a lot of their work tirelessly. So I don't know if our Ilmicham wanted to say anything.
Well, I'm trying to give everybody a chance to say, we hope we can get another 20 out of you. But you know, it's been a real honor and privilege to know that I come from a really strong community, and a community that is very passionate about who we are and about our relationship with the land. And you know, I hear somebody calling over there, and I'm often reminded by Stuart about how important the work is that we do for our kids. And that's a real blessing to know that you're approachable and that you're reasonable and fair. And, you know, I just can't express on behalf of our community how much of a saint you've been in coming home and always being part of home. So I just, on behalf of the community, want to express our gratitude and our love, but mostly we'll see you on the line. We love you guys. We love you guys lots. And I hope you guys can enjoy that. You know, the company, the sun, the trees, the water, you know, you speak about all of those things. And that kind of jumped out at us. So the home, you know, everything about it.
White, on behalf of the West Bank First Nation, myself and my council, Chris Derrickson, Brian Eli, Thomas Koenig, and Fernand Alexander, I would really like to thank you on their behalf for everything that you've done for us. I want to thank you for the direction, the kindness that you've shown me and given me in the last 2 years of my leadership. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for the two of you, everything that you bring to our nation. Your diplomacy is, it's amazing, Stuart. And I want to really just thank you again for everything that you've done for the last decades. And I would hope that if I'm here 20 years from now that I can look as calm and serene as you. Lim, thank you.
Right. Yilmecham, seen you come a long ways, you and your good wife. Me and my good wife been watching you from time to time. We're in the background. We let all the picture taken of you. I think the work that we do, like it's told in our Chief Deputy stories, we work one day for the people, 1 week, 1 month, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So we all have a job to do, and I'm glad you're doing the work that you're doing. I say this because we have ancestors that from the Giuseppe times that are with us. I could feel them when I move around. And we certainly have some elders with us today. And they'll be still with us for a while. So those are the kind of things I think about. And I really appreciate the picture, because that's my late father, Joe Pete Saddleman. That's his true meast, the loon. So I always watch for the loon to come in the spring. Probably next week he should be heading south. So I always think about the Chief Deputy stories and all those kind of things. Much appreciated. Thank you for your wonderful work. Why?
On behalf of the people of Spachman, Kulshana, Upper Nicola, we give you a heartfelt thanks for all of the days and nights and miles and kilometers that you spent on our behalf. We can't thank you enough, but just know that we were with you and you're honored in our community, so white Limelant.
I also want to say thank you for my band. I'm sure that if my chief was here, she would maybe say better things than I could, who knows. But on behalf of my Chuchuicha Sunksil, we wish you well, and our band council. And Bonnie, I'm sure that she sends her best regards and respect and knows your value, because there's not another Stewart. White Limlim.
Gives me the microphone and says 2 short words. Few. I like him. I have been so lucky to grow up with the both of you and witness your parenting and your grandparenting. And one of my favorite stories to share is I have a habit of just popping in on them out of the blue. No notice, I just like to show up at their front door. And one day I showed up and Stuart was home alone, and I rang the doorbell and he came to the door and he looked so relieved and he's like, "Oh, thank God." He was changing his grandson's diaper. And he had all the windows opened up because it was a pretty rank one. But the most amazing thing is that when he talks about children and he talks about planning for our people and taking on those roles, he's honestly at home taking on those roles as a father and a grandfather. If he's not changing diapers and picking them up and running them around, he's looking for pink backpacks and wondering where they're at. He has an unconditional love. Me and the rest of his kids weren't always angels, and yet he continued to, along with Joan, love us unconditionally and guide us, and we're never afraid to step up and tell us, smarten up, and still do it in a way that we knew we were loved. And so I am so grateful to you both and to your family and your children and your grandchildren for sharing you with the rest of us, and still being able to be at home and be amazing parents and grandparents. So, white lim lim.
I want to thank the ONA for stepping forward and honoring Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. Wonderful words, beautiful gifts. I'd like to pass the microphone to Gukbi Christian and give him a few moments to speak of the gift that was presented right after the blessing.
The blanket that we presented to Stuart and Joan, it's the meeting of the waters. It represents here in Tecumloops, and we put the Union of BC Indian Chiefs logo on it, because this is where the Union was born, 1969. So we honor him with that blanket and protect him and look after him. And I'll just teasing Stuart, now that I know his Indian name is the Loon, we'll call him Looney. But it's interesting, the loon in our oral history talks about, it represents freedom. In our stories, it talks about how the loon was used to escape the colonial forces. And I was thinking about that when I just learned his name. I said, holy, that's what this man has been doing his whole life, fighting those colonial forces for freedom for us, all of us here and our children and grandchildren, those yet to come. So on behalf of the Secwepemc Nation, we really heartfelt kuksjam limlim to everything that you've done for us and you'll continue to do. And look after yourself first. Now you have some time. Kuksjam.
I'd like to now call forward Mahmoud Zumgi, Regional Chief Terry TG, and he can correct my pronunciation.
Masai, Makshuam Tsimgi, wolf with a white spot on the head. And my spot is getting bigger and bigger. It's going to be my whole head pretty soon. Masai, I just want to acknowledge all the good work that you've done for the past 20 years. And every time we've called upon you, you were there, whether it was after your car accident, you were there in a wheelchair to support the Burns Lake, the forestry workers in the mill who passed away, and we had a staged protest against WCB. You were there, and I picked up the package at the airport, and that was Stuart in a wheelchair. But many other times too, whether it was missing, murdered Indigenous women, pipelines or anything like that, we all know that Stuart will be there. But for myself, it's that personal connection. About 11 years ago, my cousin passed away, Brenda Levesque. She was doing treatment for cancer, and on Highway 16 it was snowy, and Brenda passed away. She crashed head-on along with her 4 adopted children and foster children. But when we had the funeral and the service in Prince George, Stuart, you were there. And to see you show up at our most darkest times, including a year ago when I lost my niece and nephew within 4 days, the message that you sent me it meant a lot. And I think, you know, many of us in this room have that personal connection with you, and I want to recognize that it's beyond just the political stuff that you do, year in and year out. But I do want to present you a gift. It's an Indian suitcase. You know, if things go sideways with Joan, you could put your stuff in there, and you could put it in the overhead compartment. And no, I'm kidding. Epic. I'm sorry, Stuart. So on behalf of the BCAFN and myself and staff and the board, Chief Harvey McLeod, Chief Charles Morvan, Chief Marilyn Slett, and Chief Rebecca David, we just want to offer you this gift, and hopefully it fits. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Regional Chief. And I think every chief in the room is wishing to have a suitcase just like this one, Stuart. And I guess the sad truth is we've all had one just like that before. I'd like to take a moment and watch this blessed event as they cross the threshold together. Don't rush her, Stuart. I have a letter that I'd like to read out, and it's from Mandel Pinder. Dear Grand Chief Stewart, I express my deepest gratitude to you for your work as president of the UBCIC over these 20 years. To Joan, your kids and grandkids, for sharing you with us and for the honor of working with you. It's not an easy job to be president. It is difficult. You are dealing with crown governments who are always trying to take something away. You are unusual. Leaders often burn out, not you. Your star is growing brighter every year. Back in 2006, I witnessed the bestowing on you by the Okanagan Nation chiefs, leaders, matriarchs, and elders, the rare honor of the title of Grand Chief. I am taught that the name does not make a person. You make the name. You have turned your name into something special. You took your name and made it powerful by listening to people, loving us, loving your family intensely, supporting and loving us. It is not enough to talk about love. We need to live love. You lead by example, a leader in the purest sense. You show by example how to bear witness, reminding that everyone has title. To uphold it, we need to act, and you do that with such kindness. Kindness begins with the understanding that all people struggle. No questions asked. If someone needs support or protection, if someone is standing up for land, water, for culture, standing up for Indigenous laws, for the earth, you are there. Wild salmon, children and families, murdered and missing people, those who are killed falling through the safety net, you grieve the trauma and respond to the political situation. When someone is going through a storm, your presence is far more powerful than words. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Watching you work, there is no barometer on normal. I recall Rosalie Wilson, now a seasoned Okanagan lawyer. When she was called to the bar, you were at a meeting all day in Vancouver, and still you made it to her call party, hundreds of miles away in the Okanagan. You kept your word. You said you would be there. You are a cat with 9 lives. We are grateful for every one of them. You know to fight for the things we care about in a way that will lead others to join, building a house of alliances, building relationships based on mutual respect and acknowledgement. I think your greatest power is your unifying spirit, your willingness to be open and honestly reach across boundaries without losing who you are. You are steadfast. You and I are the same generation. We come from very different backgrounds, but we have gone through post-traumatic growth together. I trust our rough-edge conversations, which broke through blockages in my heart, give me a sense of belonging and glimpses into the gorgeous. Martin Luther King described love as the most potent instrument available in mankind's quest for peace and security. Your love is great. We love you deeply. Know in your heart how truly great you really are. Vancouver Island University Chancellor Louise Mandel, QC LLD, honor. I think I'm going to have to email her and let her know she said everything I wanted to. But we have, what I'd like to do now is call the First Nations Summit task group members, Cheryl Casimir and Robert Phillips, forward, please. And Melissa Louie, sweetie, honey.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah. Wait, Chukwinuk. I'll just probably do the introduction, and then Cheryl can have a few words too. I know it's getting late in the evening, so I give acknowledgements as well to Kamloops, to Schwem, and to Chief Fred Seymour and the council, to the hereditary chiefs, chief and councils, Grand Chief, Miss Grand Chief, Just wanted to say a few words, and I think it's important that we commemorate not only Stuart, but the organization, of course, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. And this is for the Union, this picture. But when you think of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, you immediately think of Stuart. And every time I hear Stewards of the Land, I think of Stuart, every meeting I go to. And a funny thing, because as you know, the summit is treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements. And we're in Atlant, and we're talking about the pros and cons of negotiations. And he did it very mild-mannered, professional, and a statesman. And one of the things I've learned from him, because I used to be quite outspoken when I was younger, is to listen and say what needs to be said and don't say it again. And I really, really watch his mannerism and how he conducts himself. And in fact, the Union and Chief Bob Chamberlain, Cookby, Judy Wilson. And so on behalf of the First Nations Summit, Grand Chief Ed John, of course, our co-chairs, Leah and Ray, our staff, we're very honored to be here. We partake in the meetings. We work together as a leadership council. But as was said many times, we're advocates and lobby for the title holders, and that being you. And so I always joke around, we're like the Liberals, Conservatives, and the NDP, but at the end of the day, we all work together as the BCAFN and the Union and the Summit. So this is a gift, and I'm going to give Cheryl a word, of course.
Oh, gee, thanks, Robert. Just really happy to be here to be part of this ceremony acknowledging your unfettered dedication and commitment over the years to our collective rights, and want you to know that it's really greatly appreciated. And we wouldn't be here having these words if it hadn't been for you taking initiative, is it 12 years ago now? To come together and bring the three organizations together to form what is now known as the Leadership Council. And I think that I totally appreciate the efforts behind that between yourself and the leaders of the day to have done that, recognizing that we were just wasting our time and our energy continuing to be at odds on the issues when it was more useful for us and beneficial for all of us to come together and work with each other. So greatly appreciative of that. And on a personal level, I too watch how you carry yourself and listen to your words. I've always been one to listen and to learn from great leaders such as yourself. And hopefully one day I'll be able to carry out continue to do the work and carry myself in a way that is reflective of yourself and other great leaders in this province and in this country. And so, Joan, thank you for allowing him to do the work that he does. I know it takes a lot of time away from family, but I also know, though, that, Stuart, you do try to find a balance in that. And you talk so fondly of your children and your grandchildren, and so I really appreciate the fact that you do what you do. And so here's to another 20 years, hopefully.
Put it in your suitcase, Stuart. I think I just want to capitalize on the last statement from Task Group member Cheryl Casimir. We fully expect another 20 years of service from Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. This is a moment to celebrate, to recognize a man that has devoted the past 20 years to the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, which means this entire table and all the First Nations in British Columbia. This is not a retirement. This is a pit stop. It's a refueling so we can get back in that rig and get back on the road and help all of our people that are out there. I'm going to take a liberty here, and I want to call up Grand Chief Percy Joe, if you could come and share a few remarks as one of the founding members, and to bring to a close our conversations here. And I was really happy to see that Grand Chief Percy was awarded the Award of BC recently for all the work that he's done. And of course, we all know the long, rich military history as well.
Thank you. You know you're not supposed to do that. Yeah, I think I have to give Stuart a lot of credit. I seen him come in as a young man. After 20 years, he still looks young. So either he has a secret potion or he hasn't been working hard enough. But I think we all know he does work very hard, and just like to congratulate the leadership you've provided over the last 20 years that we've all witnessed, and proud to serve along with you, and just I guess take care of yourself, and if you're just taking a pit stop, take the time to rejuvenate yourself and hit the road again. And thank you for the service you've done and the continued service I know you'll provide. Thank you very much. And Joan, keep him healthy.
So I've noted the time, and it's now 5 o'clock, so we've got 30 minutes before the banquet tonight at the Sandman. And so I would like to encourage people that have words to share that you get the attention of the MC. That's going to be incredible host at the banquet. And we can share some more remarks about the Union of BC Indian Chiefs' 50th anniversary, but also the incredible work that Grand Chief Stuart Phillip has accomplished for the 20 years. And I've been really fortunate to have Stuart as a colleague, to hear and help me when I first began my time in politics, and to take the time to show me by example how to lead at a regional level. But that is only one layer. The other layer is the sobriety, the guidance, the spiritual, the personal growth that he's helped me with. And for those phone calls I made to him when I was absolutely falling apart trying to figure life out, he was there and he helped guide me. And Stuart, for that I will forever be grateful for the man that you are outside of the role that you fulfill so well on behalf of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. So I'd like to call forward our Elder George Saddleman to provide us with a closing prayer, and then we can make our way to the celebration. Gail Kessa.
Why? Esquishwiu, otherwise known as George Saddleman. I want to sing my personal prayer song. It came to me about 15 years ago. I used to go see the doctor quite regularly, complaining about this, and complaining about that. The doctor finally took me in the office one day. George, why don't you go see your own kind of doctor? So I did. I went to see spiritual people. They said, George, reason why you're sick down here, because there's a song that you have to sing. It's got to come out. So that's what I've been doing the last 15 years. Whenever I travel somewhere, besides singing Hank Williams songs and Waylon Jennings, I sing my personal prayer song to give me that spiritual strength so I can go somewhere and feel at ease. But today I want to dedicate this song to Stuart, Joan. Give them that spiritual strength so that they can carry on with the work for the people. I stand here before the chiefs, delegates, elders, guests, and certainly stand in front of here, Stuart and Joan. I want to remind us that we have ancestors that gave us a big responsibility, and that's what we're carrying out. I also want to thank the relatives that are here. A lot of relatives here as well. I want to thank the little people, the ancient ones. I want us to remind us about how food was given story, the reactions between Sinclair and Wailu. Those are the kind of things I think about when I come to meetings such as this. It's a short song. I won't be here till midnight, Stuart. Ayo, 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 ayo. Hey, why living out?
So I want to thank everyone for staying and honoring a great man, and I look forward to seeing you all at the banquet in a very short time.